Fight.
Welcome back to the Two Pointers podcast. I'm Trevor Everett. Really quick at the top, I normally don't do this with the guests hanging out here in the StreamYard, but we got to get this out, man. The trade deadline just happened yesterday. I just want to let you guys know. Do not forget that Two Pointers is sponsored by SeatGeek. $20 off your first purchase going to any sporting event, concert. Obviously basketball is the prevalent thing around here, but there's a ton of stuff to go to right now. Obviously, as we're heading into the spring, NBA games are like $20, so you can technically go to an NBA game for just the fees, which is really cool. $20 off your first purchase, code SeatGeek. SeatGeek's a really intuitive app that gives you a deal score, a view of your seats, really great rating system so you understand what kind of deal you're getting. Been partnered with SeatGeek now for over a year. We really, really appreciate that. That $20 off your first purchase, code 2pointers, supports the show and obviously helps bring out as best of content as we can give you. So I told Chris I would take a minute to read the ad so I don't have to do it later. He was very nice to let us do that. So we're here to talk, obviously, kind of a home and home, which I figured we couldn't really call it a home and home if it wasn't exactly followed up, right after the next one, right? Since I was just on Obie's office on Wednesday, we talked about the trade deadline, just guys we'd like to see move, some hypotheticals, some really fun stuff at the end that we'll see on TikTok soon. Man, I hate to start with us gloating, but I think we were pretty on point. Before we get to that, introduce yourself, people that might be new here who don't know. We talked last year, Mavs Nets. I believe there's one more appearance before that, but let people know where they can find you, what you're up to. I know you guys got a cool thing that just happened as well.
Yeah, man. I'm Chris. I'm a co-host of the Ball Game podcast. I'm sure some of you guys maybe have seen us around. I also recently started my own podcast, Obie's Office. That's where Trevor was just my most recent guest. And that's something where I'm just much different than having my three co-hosts that were on the podcast every week. So I kind of know what they're going to say. The point of having my own podcast is to bring some guests on, get some different opinions, have some different conversations. People that I don't know what they're going to bring to the table. But yeah, man, I'm active on Twitter, stuff like that. My Twitter handle is right there, Obie's Office. But yeah, man, I'm happy to be here.
All right. Like I said, I want to start with, I don't know if I want to start with us gloating, but let's be real for a second. I'm going to just really quick check off the names that we got as like guys we'd like to see move. There were some deals thrown in there, so obviously you can't take credit for anything here probably. But we should be proud of it, right? I mentioned, at least I'll go off my list and then let me know if there's any I missed. I know you had quite a few as well. I mentioned Alex Caruso. We'll get to that later. He wasn't moved. Atlanta did not move Clint Capella. Bojan for Detroit was moved. Buddy Hield was moved. I mentioned TJ McConnell or Buddy Hield, so I'm going to mark TJ McConnell as wrong. Quentin Grimes was moved. Davis Bertans was moved. I'm just, like I said, rolling down this list, and it's going to lead into something, I promise. Malcolm Brogdon, I was really sad about because, good veteran leader on a bad team. I just thought that was interesting. So that didn't happen. Pirtle didn't happen. Bruce Brown didn't happen. There was some other. You had a good one with Toronto. We'll get to in a minute. That was not the deal I expected, even if it was the right guy. Probably. Kelly Olynyk was moved, and then under my would shake things up category, sort of happened. Let's just be real for a second. None of the Warriors were moved that I mentioned. The Thunder trade package I mentioned of young players like Trey Mann and those kinds of guys, we'll get to that trade. That technically happened because they got Hayward. Keldon Johnson did not happen. DeMar DeRozan did not happen. D'Angelo Russell did not happen. And then I guess now that I look at this, the who's taking you, it feels kind of wrong to put Evan Fournier there because he, the contract was tradable. We spent a bunch of time on that, right? So he got moved, and then last but certainly not least was my only pipe dream player, which was Lauri Markkanen, starting at 3 picks for the Thunder. Didn't think, again, pipe dream, going to call it wrong. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 trades on my end. 6.5, 7 if you count the Thunder, that were good. Was there any that I missed that we should address that you were like, saw that one coming?
My biggest victory lap, PJ Washington to the Mavericks, man. I didn't just say PJ Washington would get traded, but I said he is going to the Mavericks. I also had Dennis Schroeder in there. I'm not too happy about his destination, though. Kind of makes absolutely no sense to me, but I said he'd get traded, so I'll take a victory lap there.
Yeah, so for those that didn't know, we'll kind of just jump right into that one. There was something else I wanted to start with, but this is a great segue. Um, not only did you, not only did you say he was going to the Mavericks, you basically said the package. I mean, Grant Williams. It was going to be some combination of that. We knew that he probably rubbed people the wrong way in Dallas. Looking back on that, that's probably something we could have assumed. But for the full trade here, PJ Washington, this is probably the biggest trade of the trade deadline, as crazy as that sounds. Like, it just shows you ultimately what this ended up feeling like. The Mavs received PJ Washington, a 2024 and 2028 second round pick from the Hornets. The Hornets received Grant Williams, Seth Curry, who makes his return, who's from Charlotte, and then a 2027 first round pick. So, talk about that. I know you had already, in the show we did together before, you talked as if it already happened, right? And you had talked about like what the impacts are, but just briefly, what does he bring to the Mavs that's important that's going to change things for a closet Mavs fan?
So I'll start with this. I don't know if you were in our stream last night when we started talking about this. If you heard this fun stat, I think this is a Kevin O'Connor stat. There are 4 players in the NBA who have logged 900 possessions in pick and roll as a screener, with also having 100 possessions as the pick and roll ball handler. So he's one of the 4. Can you guess the other 3?
One more time for me and the audience.
900 possessions as a pick and roll screener. So, not just roll, but like pick and pop, whatever, but just as the screener. And then 100 possessions as a pick and roll ball handler. One of 4 players.
This is good. I guess my only question for hint, so we don't spend forever on it, would be, does it lean more towards guys that are taller than 6'5"?
Yes.
Okay, it does. And look, I know that maybe sound crazy, but there could be some smaller guys. Like Steph screens a lot more than people realize. I'm sure he was actually a lot higher than people think. Oh man. It's Chet has to be on that list.
It's not Chet.
Really? Is he? Oh, that's crazy.
Chet.
Okay. I guess 900 as a ball or 900 as a screener, and how many as a ball handler?
100.
100 as a ball handler.
One of them's pretty obvious.
I'm gonna cheat. Yeah. Is it LeBron?
No, it's not LeBron.
It's not SGA.
Think of a dominant big man.
Oh, is it Jokic?
It's Jokic. Yeah, that one's the obvious one.
Okay, I'm gonna look at the NBA teams list just to make sure I'm
not
just like
the other 2 guys. I'll give you this hint: they are like all-star caliber players.
It's not Giannis, because that would Giannis. Give it away. It's not Siakam, although he probably is up there.
It's not
Embiid.
Not Embiid.
I'm just going like best player on each team just to see if it's not Paolo.
Not Paolo.
Ooh, I bet these are. You know what's crazy is I'm giving you all these guys that are probably not far off. Like a lot of these guys are this capable of a player.
Those guys probably don't have like a guy like Paolo probably maybe doesn't have the 900 as a screener. Because I'd be shocked if Paolo doesn't have 100 as the ball handler. You know what I mean? He definitely does.
Larry
Markkanen's one of them.
Oh, okay. So Jokic.
One more.
So 2 foreign big guys that can shoot. That's interesting. There's one more. I'm trying to think of teams that are good because it's probably a guy that is playing.
I'll give you a hint. He's not a foreign player, but he fits that description you just said. A big guy who could shoot and handle.
Is he also a white guy?
He's not.
Okay. I didn't know if there was just like this consistent theme here between the 3. Big guy that can handle. Now I'm confused because I was going to go Zion, but that's not right.
You're in the ballpark with Zion.
Am I on the right team?
No.
This example went way longer than I thought it would.
Yeah. Think of players like Zion in a similar mold to Zion.
Oh, God. This put me on the spot here.
Big, beefy, lefty power forward.
Big, beefy. Now I'm really confused.
Lefty.
Oh, is it Julius Randle?
It's Julius Randle.
He should not have 100 touches as ball handler in any scenario.
Yeah. But I thought that was an interesting stat, and I bring that up first just because PJ Washington, he's not great at one particular thing. But the Mavs have a bunch of guys who seem to be just specialists alongside Luka and Kyrie. You have a guy like Derek Lively who's a rim running shot blocker. You have a guy like Tim Hardaway Jr. who his specialty is being a spark plug. You have a guy like Josh Green. His specialty is kind of getting out in transition. You have all these specialty guys. PJ Washington brings them so much versatility that they didn't have, especially when you're giving up a guy like Grant Williams, who his game on both ends of the floor was kind of one-dimensional. Like his offensive game was just stand in the corner. He doesn't bring you much as a ball handler. He doesn't bring you much as a scorer. And even the three-point shooting hasn't really been there the last 2 months of the season. So PJ Washington, I think he's shooting 32% from three right now, which is a career low for him. But you have to expect the efficiency numbers to go up playing with guys like Luka and Kyrie. He's a really good weak side rim protector to help out. Having guys like Derek Lively, and we'll talk about another new addition they made. But you have some great, like, strong shot blockers, but you also have a good weak side guy. You have a guy who you could throw on these elite big forwards, the Giannis's of the world, the Julius Randles of the world. You have a guy who could, obviously no one's stopping, the all-star caliber players, but you have a guy who you could throw on them who could, hold his own with his strength and could stay in front of guys. I think just the versatility he brings to the team, like it really moves the needle for me because they were seriously lacking that. Like that was probably their biggest flaw going into the deadline, was just being versatile and giving Jason Kidd options in terms of the lineups he throws out there.
You mentioned the 3-point shooting. I hope that for the sake of what they think they're getting, I hope it does improve because I took a deeper look at it while you were finishing your point there. He's basically gotten worse since he started his career.
Yeah.
It's interesting because like he's had LaMelo for a lot of that, right? Basically, since he's had LaMelo, he's gone down, right? Which doesn't make any remote sense whatsoever as somebody who's that good of a playmaker, right? His best season was 2020, 2021. 2019, 2020, so 38%, 37%. And then, yes, the attempts go up from 4.6 as the highest at 36% to 5.9 at 34% and 5.5 this year to 32%, right? So it's just a down year, but it is going down in that general direction. Obviously, a guy this early in his career, I'm not going to react to that, but just thought it was interesting. Really quick, you mentioned Gafford, or you alluded to Gafford already. I'll run through that trade really fast for those that aren't like sitting, if they're in their car right now, they're not reading from the trades, just kind of do them justice. The Mavs acquired Daniel Gafford, and the Wizards receive, I'm calling it a salary dump in Rashawn Holmes, who I have been so high on for years, who I wish would just be an opportunity in a place where he can win and succeed. I thought he was going to do that in Sacramento for a 2024 first-round pick from the Mavs via the Thunder. I believe that's a worse stub somewhere in there as well. So touch quickly on Daniel Gafford, because I know that he's somebody that probably should have been targeted by a lot of teams like the Mavs that aren't necessarily at the top of their conferences, but somebody that can provide valuable playoff minutes.
Yeah, I mean, he's not this all-star caliber player, obviously, by any stretch of the imagination, but he's a guy who, like I said, can block shots, can rebound, and can be a pick-and-roll partner for one of the greatest pick-and-roll players we've ever seen touch a basketball in Luka Doncic. It's a seamless fit, and especially, I think some people might look at it and be like, well, why are they doing that? They have Derek Lively, this rookie sensation. Derek Lively's been in and out of the lineup this year. He'll play 3 games, he'll miss 3 games. He'll play 2 games, he'll miss 2 games. So you just get a guy who can back Derek Lively up. And when he comes in, you don't have to change the game plan. You don't have to change anything. But then also, like we've seen, Lively's had to miss games here and there. You have a guy who can give you be a super impactful spot starter for you, which is both trades, because I'm kind of looking at them together when I evaluate them. Both trades just made so much sense when you look at it. Like, yes, they did give up a decent amount of draft capital, but you're trying to build a contender around Luka Doncic. So the draft capital, I don't really care too much about it, but in terms of the players, you gave up a guy in Grant Williams who was obviously overpaid and had a super long contract, who we were seeing the reports all morning. All the guys in the locker room just weren't really vibing with Grant Williams. So you give up a guy who, I don't want to like accuse Grant Williams of anything, but let's just say it was a locker room cancer in this scenario. And then 2 guys who weren't really playing for you in Seth Curry and Rashawn Holmes, and you get 2 really good rotational pieces. PJ Washington could come in and be their third scorer on most nights if Tim Hardaway Jr. doesn't have it going. And then, like I said, Daniel Gafford's a guy who's the box score will never do a guy like Daniel Gafford justice, but just his gravity as a screener is going to make Luka Doncic's game that much easier. Obviously, a guy like Luka, nothing will ever be easy for Luka, but having guys like this just make life so much easier for him.
Well, I think that sums it up well, and I think this does, like, for what they gave up, it's really just the picks, and the Thunder, are still going to somehow find a way to get a 2028 swap out of that, and the Mavs are going to be fine from a pick department. They obviously know what they're doing in those picks, and obviously that's how they got Lively. All right, this is how I wanted to lead the show, and I think it's good that we're getting to this now. I guess I don't think there is another. If you don't count the Mavs, right? The winner of the deadline was the Knicks. It was, right? At the end of the day, it's one trade, unless I'm just blind and missing something, right? It was one trade that they were involved in, but it was to get Alec Burks and Bojan Bogdanovic from the Pistons. And then the Pistons got Evan Fournier's expiring, Malachi Flynn, Quentin Grimes hurts, I'm sure, as somebody who's, I've been high on him for a long time. Had him as like, I didn't do draft boards that year, but I did a show that was called Our Favorite Five, and Josh and I did our favorite 5 players in the draft, just no real particular order, whatever. And Grimes was in my top 5. So Ryan Arcidiacono and 2 future second round picks in cash considerations. So basically, the bulk of the trade, the Knicks get Alec Burks and Bojan Bogdanovic. I'm not going to ask you the answer or the question that I would consider is lazy for this example. Is like, oh, did they win? What's this grade? Da-da-da. But I want to ask this. I'm kind of putting you on the spot. What's the Knicks closing lineup once everybody's healthy? In the playoffs, when they're playing Boston, they're obviously not going to be a favorable matchup for Boston. Boston's going to have struggles. What is their closing playoff lineup?
So we actually spoke, me and Matt were speaking about this because he kind of laid it out. He said, this will be the closing lineup. And he said whatever it was. And I said, honestly, like, you didn't, because they're Knicks fans, I said, you guys didn't make this trade to have a set closing lineup. This trade gives you versatility. So my answer to that is the closing lineup will be, and we've seen Tibbs do it. He will play the guys who are playing well. He doesn't owe anyone anything. So my answer is the closing lineup will be whoever's playing well. My answer really is whatever lineup is working will be their closing lineup. But I will say most times I expect it to be, honestly, Brunson, move OG up to the 2, have Bojan out there, and then Randall and Hartenstein. That's what I would expect to be the best lineup for them. It's tough because Bojan is a big guy and OG is a forward technically, but OG could guard and he could shoot well enough where me personally, if I was a coach, I wouldn't have a problem moving him up to the 2 if I have to. But that lineup, you have size, you have shooting, you have defense, you have a little bit of everything. And for as well as Dante DiVincenzo is playing right now, I'd personally rather have Bojan out there just for the elite spacing he provides.
And playoff experience. I mean, ultimately, the point of the question was, I like the answer at the beginning. First of all, the point of the question is to show and to prove that they have flexibility. They have ultimate flexibility to choose what they want to do. I don't think there's a set answer necessarily, but I don't know how. Their best lineup might be Randall at the 5, but then you're gonna have too many defensive liabilities. Maybe if Porzingis is healthy, the Celtics are gonna have a huge advantage there. It starts to get really funky there. So, obviously, you mentioned DiVincenzo. He's been incredible, right? Shooting the lights out. So, obviously, you could swap him in there. Obviously, Josh Hart, depending on who steps up. Like you said, Hart could be in there at any moment. They have enough guys. And obviously, I don't know if they're going to get Mitchell Robinson back. And if they are, when. But I'm obviously going to want him. If it's a big that's not Kristaps Porzingis, so if it's like an Al Horford, you're going to want Mitchell Robinson out there, right? You're going to want somebody with slower feet that's going to be able to guard the paint. But Brunson, OG, I would rather have OG at the 3, but again, this is just more to prove that they have flexibility to put him where he needs to be, and he's been incredible. I just hope he take as much time as you need, because you don't have to be a top 4 seed, right? It would help having home playoff games at the Garden.
That's
right?
exactly what I said to the boys last night. Matt was like, "Oh my gosh, like OG's getting surgery. This sucks. We're gonna fall in the
It's a
seating." I was like,
it's a 3-week injury. I mean, it really is.
and I said to him, I was like, "That's probably why they were comfortable with like telling him like go get the surgery was after this trade. Like that's why you make a trade like this to have depth if your guys get injured. Like they've been staying afloat without OG and Julius Randle in the lineup, and now you're plugging in Bojan and Alec Burks to a lineup that's already been thriving. Like they'll be fine."
Correct. I completely agree with that. All right, let's hit a few more that I think are interesting, and then we'll keep rolling with some other stuff that we got to get to. So, I don't know what was the next deal that stuck out to you. I guess I'll pose it as a question to you as the guest.
That's honestly one that's probably not getting talked about enough. I mean, I don't even think we mentioned it on our show last night, but I think Buddy Hield to the Sixers was a big move. And obviously, because of the Embiid injury, no one's talking about it. But I mean, this is the best, like, pure standstill shooter that Joel Embiid's had around him since the JJ Redick days on the Sixers. And we saw how impactful JJ was on those Sixers teams. So, like, obviously, the Embiid injury history is a huge question mark, especially considering this team's future. But you get a guy who should fit as seamlessly as they come. Like he has one job, make open threes. So I think that's a huge trade, that very underrated trade, just given the circumstances.
Yeah, I think even in a down year for Buddy Hield, it's a good year because you're still getting one of the best 3-point shooters in the NBA, and that's spacing alone. Obviously, it allows Maxey to be more free, right? He doesn't have to be as much of a shooter. It allows him to create and attack more, which I think where he's best. I know he's obviously improved that aspect every year over year. That was my biggest question mark for him coming in to the NBA from college was I don't know if I'm going to be able to rely on him as a playoff shooter, right? I knew he'd be good, but not, okay, it's just a guy that I want taking 7 threes in a playoff game, knowing he could probably make 2 of them.
Right.
Well, I'm wrong on that, which is totally fine, but now he doesn't even have to do that, right? He can be a secondary shooter from that aspect. The Suns had this log jam of a trade that was a 3-team deal. They got David Roddy and Maurice O'Neal. I thought that was interesting. The Thunder adding Gordon Hayward, what do you think the reason was for that?
Probably the biggest reason was, all right, like let's get a veteran presence without having to give up too much. They didn't really give up anything that was impactful for them this year, and you get a guy who has some playoff experience, has experience being an all-star level player. Like Gordon Hayward is a guy who's just, he's going to come in and he's only going to help. He's not going to, even if he's injured, even if he doesn't make it to the playoff time, just his impact, just being there on the sideline with these guys, like his impact is only going to help these guys. So I think it was a trade that I didn't see coming for sure. I was pretty surprised by it, but I mean that's a guy who's only going to help you.
Yeah, the reason I asked is because I sit here and look at it and I think like I believe is he an expiring? Let me just make sure.
Pretty sure.
Hayward. I'm pretty sure Hayward's an expiring. But regardless, maybe I'm sitting here and I'm like maybe I'm just missing something. Like maybe he's gonna be the 6th or 7th guy for the Thunder, right? Like he's not a backup big, right? Which is what we addressed and said that they needed, which is why I brought up the Lowry thing. Even this year in 25 games, 46, 36, 76 splits, right? 4.5 rebounds, 4.5 assists. Like he can pass the ball really, really well. Like I think that's an underrated aspect of this. And not that this team needs any more guys, but they have so many players. I don't know if it's been said enough, but the Presti model has been get guys that when the ball's in their hands, they're not going to worry, right? Casey Wallace is a point to that, right? Even Trey Mann, well, even though he had some turnover issues there, I think when he was playing some more, but
even a guy like Aaron Wiggins this year.
Yep, Giddy.
Like Aaron Wiggins is out there making plays,
and they were able to keep him in the steal too. They intruded Trey and Bertans. They didn't need shooting, which is why Bertans was okay with going. They have guys that can fill that role, and Hayward can as well. Was kind of my point. Was I just kept sitting there going like Presti knows more than most of us. Just it is what it is. I would just felt like I was missing something in this deal where I'm like, and by the way, contract I did not get pulled up because Basketball Reference like hides it on like the 44th page at the bottom. So 99% sure he's an expiring is my point. All right. I'm trying to figure out if there's any more. I know you mentioned Schroeder earlier with the Nets and the Raptors. Like, just it was a head scratcher to say the least. But for who?
I guess more so for the Nets because in terms of the Raptors, you freed up some money. Obviously, it's been reported they're going to waive Dinwiddie. So I guess like from the Raptors' perspective, okay, we freed up some money, but for the Nets, it's just like, what is it? Like you had some pieces. The only one you traded was Royce O'Neal. Okay, like cool, you moved on from Royce O'Neal, but then you bring in a guy who's on. And listen, Shooter's not making crazy money. I think it's around 10 million, if I'm not mistaken, maybe like 8 or 9. But he's on a 2-year deal. It's just like why are you bringing that guy in? Like why is that the play? I don't know. They just have no Their direction is so confusing to me. So
Yeah.
confusing.
Yeah,
And if
that's
they don't
interesting.
start figuring it out, excuse me, if they don't start figuring it out, we're going to start talking about the Nets the way that I'm sure in a few minutes we're going to talk about it, the way that I talk about my Chicago Bulls right now, where it's just like it's embarrassing, honestly. Like you can't just sit back and do nothing. And I get it. They were put in a tough spot with the KD and Kyrie stuff, but like that's over. Like let's move on. Let's pick a direction. You don't like you don't want to be stuck in that 8 to 12 range in the conference for the next 5 years. Like that's just not where you want to be. I don't know, man. I feel like they could have done more at the deadline. That's why I'm disappointed in them.
Does the Pat Bev deal feel like, does it change anything for you? Campaign in a second for Pat Bev.
Pepev helps the Bucks. He helps the Bucks a lot. Like definitely an underrated move. I mean, campaign's been okay for them, but like what does campaign really provide? He can make shots here and there, but even that it's not that consistent. At least Pat Bev, he might not be the scorer that campaign is, but you have Giannis, you have Dame, you have Chris Middleton. Like you don't need they're the number 2 offense in basketball, maybe the number 1 offense in basketball right now. You don't need scoring. Team lacks perimeter defense and point of attack defense. So Pat Bev, that's his specialty. So like I think, and just as a locker room presence, like we saw it last year when Pat Bev went to the Bulls for the second half of the year. Like Pat Bev is that type of guy that he could single handedly get guys to buy in. So I think it helps the Bucks a lot.
Yeah, I think that one's not getting talked about enough. I just thought it was also interesting. He's in that limbo, that Draymond Green scenario where he's playing maybe a little bit later in his career, but also in the media. It's really a weird balance. I'm only bringing it up because I thought it was fascinating that he broke his own trade, like getting a head start on him being a media member. I mean, I think he's got a role carved out there. Whether it's a podcast or whether it's a TNT desk job, I don't know if he's necessarily going to be a TNT desk guy. Jamal Crawford, I could see that more of, which is what he's doing in spots. So I just thought it was interesting. All right, I think the last trade, if I got this right, this is the last trade that I think makes any sense to even talk about. The Raptors acquire Kelly Olynyk from the Jazz as the headliner of the title. And the Raptors receive Kelly Olynyk, Ochai Agbaji. The Jazz receive Otto Porter Jr., Kira Lewis, and a 2024 first round pick. First of all, I called Kelly, you called Porter. I just didn't see Ochai moving in this deal, and I'm floored by it. So,
Yeah, I
any
mean,
thoughts on this?
I guess I'll start with the Jazz side of things. Like I am not a fan of giving up a guy on Ochai. That's a guy that I'm super high on. Like that guy is going to have a long NBA career. He could defend at a decent level. He can make shots. He was the best player on a national championship winning team. Like that guy is going to have a long career. And a team like the Jazz, who wasn't really competing for anything, it didn't really make sense to move on from him. But they were trying to free up minutes. Obviously, Olynyk was like you said, like it was almost certain Olynyk was gonna go. So if this is what it took to get rid of Olynyk, at least you bring in another future first. You free up some minutes for the other young guys you drafted this year. I trust Danny Ainge with my life. So if he didn't see Ochai in the long-term plans, and I'm gonna trust any inch there. In terms of the Raptors, I love this move for the Raptors. Like I give them an I'm not gonna give them an A plus, but I'll give them like an A minus for this move because I know a lot of people on Twitter, oh Masai, what are you doing? You're in a rebuild. How are you just giving up a first round pick? Like that pick is going to be a late first round pick this year. And a draft class that we're all calling weak. I put out a tweet saying this. It is completely not out of the range of outcomes that Ochai Agbaji has a better career than whoever is drafted with that late first round pick. You're building a nice young core. You know, you got Scotty, you got Quickly, you got RJ Barrett there. You bring in a guy like Ochai Agbaji. I mean, I really don't mind it from both sides. I kind of see the vision from both sides. Like I think it was a pretty good, and it's not a move that's going to shake up the entirety of the NBA, but it's a trade that I think just made a good amount of sense for both sides. I think it was pretty cool.
It could age poorly if Ochai continues to develop like I think he can. And the whole point for me removing Olynyk was to allow him to play more minutes in Utah in Will Hardy's system that has helped him be successful. Obviously, if Taylor Hendricks doesn't play 25 minutes tomorrow night or tonight, whatever their next game is, I'm going to riot because he needs to, and there's an opportunity there. I texted somebody about it who was asking me about this trade, and I was like, it's literally, this trade has nothing to do with Olynyk's contract. It was just the way it made money work. He didn't go to a contender. I don't think he's a buyout guy, but a contender should have Kelly Olynyk on their roster right now, right? And the way I look at the trade deadline, that's the most important kind of moves. But this obviously wasn't that, right? Agbaji is going to be on a team that's going to be, fighting for a top 6 lottery pick. Do they even have their own pick this year? I think there was one of those teams that they made a trade with.
The Jazz?
The Spurs.
Sure.
The Raptors don't have their own pick, I believe, or it's top 6 protected from the Spurs or something like that.
Yeah.
That's what it was. This was literally about Ochai Agbaji and that 2024 first round pick. That was it. Like that, I think that's this trade boils down to that, and it's that simple. All right. Quickly, actually, we're done here on the actual trades that happened, unless there was any more you wanted to mention. But I basically just sifted through them all. Robin Lopez, we didn't mention. Delano Banton, Jaden Springer.
Oh, Robin Lopez, so funny, man.
You're reading the book.
Reading the book. Well, he tweeted, he was like, because Pat Bev got traded, and then like 15 minutes later he got traded. He tweeted like at Pat Bev, it was a pleasure to let me pull it up. Like it was a pleasure to play with you. You're one of the best teammates I ever had.
Oh, so he was leaning into it. This is good. I like when guys are lighthearted about it. Obviously, his brother's a starting center on the team.
He said, I enjoyed being teammates with Pat Bev for all of an hour and 45 minutes. I'll never forget those times. # indelible. And then someone tweeted at him, because I guess the Kings are going to release him. Thanks for all the memories in Sacramento. Kings legend, once a king, always a king. And he quoted it and said, I just hope it's enough to get my number in the rafters. I hope I left a legacy there.
There's a question there that I'd love to unpack where it's like, what place would be the most deserving of Robin Lopez's jersey retirement? But that's like a show you do in August when there's no NBA on.
Yeah, he's gonna go back to the Bucks. It's gonna be hilarious because a team the Bucks gained an asset, whatever they got for trading him, and he's gonna get waived
for that though. There has to be a rule to that.
I don't know if there is. If there's not a rule, like he's going to go back.
Oh, brother. All right. Well, Robin Lopez, by the way, his jersey would be hung up in Portland, in my opinion.
Yeah.
All right. So, really quick, we talked about all these teams that made trades. The list of teams that have not made a trade in the past week, so it doesn't just include the day of, is Lakers, Cavs, Hawks, Bulls, Magic, Heat, and Pelicans. A lot to unpack there. Pelicans, I'll do quickly ones that don't even need to be brought up because it is what it is. Y'all did a little like top 4 last night on Ball Game.
Yeah.
Thought that was interesting. So I guess this will kind of sift through that. Magic, you're in a good position. You have no reason to make a trade unless it was for Trae Young, like you threw out there, right? Unless it was some ridiculous Godfather offer. The Heat, I could have seen something, but I don't really know. Nothing was.
They also already
out.
made their move.
Yeah, but there was nothing. They may need more. Depending on, I just don't think the depth's that strong, which I think could really hurt them. Obviously, we know they're coming off of the finals appearance. Bulls, Magic, Heat, Pelicans, Lakers, Cavs, Hawks. Pelicans, fine, really quick. Heat, fine for now. Magic, fine. So those 3 are out. That leaves you with Lakers, Cavs, Hawks, Bulls. I'm going to eliminate the Cavs because honestly, they're winning without Garland. Like, it is what it is, right? I'm completely and utterly confused by them. They're the most confusing team of all 30 playing right now for me, heading into the stretch of the season, last stretch of the season. So you have Lakers, Hawks, Bulls. Okay. Were you surprised that DeJounte Murray wasn't moved?
I was, but I mean, I said this last night. He's on such a good contract that it's like you don't. I know the Hawks want to win, and the clock is ticking on Trae Young. You know, at some point, if they don't turn things around, he will ask out. That's just inevitable. But I think they fumbled with, and we're going to talk about the Bulls too because it's kind of the same thing. But the two teams that were in the most trade talks all season were two of the teams that didn't make any moves, and I don't think that three of them because the Lakers were in all these trade talks too. So I don't think that's a coincidence. I think you're tanking these guys' trade value by throwing them in trade rumors and saying that you don't want them on the team all year. So am I surprised DeJounte didn't get traded? A little bit. Am I surprised that the Hawks probably didn't get offered the value back that they wanted for DeJounte? Not at all. They had no leverage. So not at all, man.
Yeah, that kind of situation tanks a team's value. I mean, it just tanks a guy's value and just not even value, but just the way he sees himself. Like we've seen so many times where you get thrown in trade rumors for that long, it affects your play, right? Like Turner, obviously, it was every offseason for 4 years, so maybe not as much of a sample size there. But he healed even a little bit here in the last month or so, right? Like at lowest shooting stretch of his career, right? Like Murray, don't be shocked if he has his worst month of his career in the last this year maybe in the next month and a half. Like I'm just not going to be surprised if he doesn't play poorly for February and some of March. My question for the Lakers: were you okay with the Lakers not making a move, knowing what we know?
If it wasn't DeJounte, what was the move gonna be? I see like that's a team where I wouldn't have minded if they threw Gabe Vincent and a second or 2 second round picks for Dennis Schroeder. That's a team that I could have seen him play for Dennis Schroeder, or you know, Daniel Gafford didn't get traded for that much. They could have been in play for Daniel Gafford if they could have made the contracts work. Like I I just think it's so tricky because they were in a little bit of a tough spot with their asset pool and the contracts they had on their team, but also like LeBron could walk this summer, and you guys clearly aren't a contender at this current moment. Obviously, I don't want to count out LeBron and AD, but the way things stand right now, they're not a contender, and that guy could walk, and you're just gonna sit back and do nothing. So I'm not a fan of it from that perspective, but also like I didn't want to see them trade D'Angelo Russell. I know that was the guy who was thrown in the most trade rumors. I thought D'Angelo Russell was having a great. To me, D'Angelo Russell's been their third best player this season. I know Austin Reeves has been pretty good, but I even think D'Angelo Russell has been better than Reeves this season. So like, don't trade your third best player. You want to trade and bring in a guy to play alongside those guys. So it's a tricky situation with the Lakers. Like I'm happy they didn't do anything stupid and give up too much for a role player or something like that, but also like all these teams made these marginal moves. You know, the Celtics went and got a guy like Jaden Springer. The
Xavier Tillman
Sixers,
too.
right?
Yeah.
They got Xavier Tillman. The Bucks went out and got a guy like Pat Bev. You know, teams made moves around the edges. So to sit back and do nothing, I'm not really a fan of. But it's a tricky situation.
Well, that's what I said to you on your show. I said, am I really? I don't remember the exact trade we talked about, but I was like, why would we give up the pick? Right? It's like 2027 and 2029. I think is the two they have. Right? Like, why give that up for a D'Angelo Russell quality player? Right? Who has been good? I'm not disagreeing with he has been good. I don't want to get into the argument with anybody this year because I'll probably be on the losing end of it regardless. But he can't be in the crunch time lineup. He just can't. His ability in crunch time. I've watched 80 to 90% of the season. It's immediately. I know that there are moments where he'll make
You
three
didn't
threes in a
like
row.
that the transition pull up three versus the Warriors?
No, I did. I didn't like any of it. Like I didn't like. And then by the way, the play before it, right? I think he had like dribbled it off, or like someone had dribbled off their leg, and it was just this whole
No, he probably had the
ordeal.
worst three possessions of basketball history, and then came down and hit a huge shot while LeBron's trailing him, calling for the ball. Hilarious
The
stuff.
right pass. I don't care if that's John Smith behind him and not LeBron James. Like it doesn't matter who's behind him, right? It could literally be the 466th best player in the NBA. Guess what? The right pass is the trailing guy with momentum. Always. Like it's just the right pass for the most part. My point being is he should have taken that through. We know that. Look, I asked the question of are you okay with it? Because at the end of the day, we've seen them last year. I mentioned to you on the last show, I said they made those moves and that helped the trade deadline. Like that helped them in the second half, right? They were a team every year. I always try to pick one in the East and one in the West that says this is a team that's just going to flip a switch, or not necessarily flip a switch. Let me be clear. It's a team that just has a better second half than they do a first half, right? Flipping a switch is more of like a playoff moment kind of thing, right? Where we can turn it on at any moment. They made those trades like Vanderbilt and others, and those are what got that to happen. Do I think this team can do that without a deal in the same roster construction? I don't know, but again, I'm with you. I don't know what was out there either.
Yeah, it's tough because I will keep making this point. I will not count out LeBron and Anthony Davis, but it's like you said, the trades last year, although they were, it's not like they brought in a third star, they didn't bring in Kyrie, but more than the way those guys played and contributed, it just injected some new life into everyone. And there's nothing coming that's going to inject some life into these guys. And Darvin Ham isn't going to do it, Like, it's like where they have to go on a run, right? They have to go on a run to get to, somehow maybe even avoid the play-in. That's what it would take, a 6-second half run. Where is that going to come from? Where is the energy for that going to come from? That's the concern. That's why it's like, how did you sit back and do nothing when you needed any type of like Jaylen Brown's tweet, the energy is about a shift. You needed any type of energy shift you could have possibly gotten, and you sat back and did nothing.
All right. If people want to hear the full, detailed, explicit version of the Bulls rant, I'll link the show from yesterday just because I think that did its justice better than you're about to do. I'm going to ask for a minute just because I think you can do it. In a minute, what's the most frustrating part? Or like what just whatever about the Bulls, and remember this is a family show still, unfortunately. It's tough. I know. I'm putting you on the spot a little bit with it. I know.
So I said to you on my show, I said, I have no expectations. I know they're going to sit back and do nothing. I wasn't expecting anything. Am I surprised? No. Am I disappointed? Yes. I'm sad. Yeah, I'm sad. You have players that people could potentially want, and you sit and do nothing. And this ownership group, this front office group, is content with mediocrity. And it's disgusting as a fan. I'm embarrassed to be a Bulls fan. You see a team like the Knicks, who is in the bottom feeders for as long as we could remember. They bring in a new ownership group, and what do? They just keep making these aggressive moves and keep showing the fans that, hey, it might not always be the best move, even though they've pretty much hit on every single move they've made. But a lot of those moves we question. So it might not always be the best move, but we are going to try. We're going to try and improve this roster and try and put out the best product we can for you. And these guys, a.k.a. Mark Eversley, are just, going out there and straight up lying, saying that we believe we could compete with this group. It's a lie because you can't compete with this group, not at a high level. We could compete for a playing spot, sure, but they have to understand that is not what fans want. That is not how you build a team. That's not how you just construct a team. It's embarrassing, man. I'm embarrassed. I said to the boys last night, the way that they were embarrassed for their whole lifetimes being Knicks fans, that's how I feel as a Bulls fan right now. I'm embarrassed.
As a Pats fan who has watched 20 years of trade outs from decent trade spots or guys that were available, and I really wanted a la Zay Flowers last year. It ended up working out with Gonzalez, but I bring up the point of they for a Patriots fan, it was they constantly just kept trading stuff away, right? They constantly kept going out of spots that they should have picked players. It's kind of a similar example. Was kind of the way I was thinking it. All right. Anything else about the trade deadline before we hit some stuff at the end that I wanted to?
No, I think we hit everything, man. I think we hit everything.
So to answer the question, was the trade deadline a flop?
In comparison to last year, yes. In regards to what my expectations were for the deadline, not really. Like DeJounte Murray not being moved was a little bit surprising, but that's really it. Like in terms of it being, I think we all knew this was going to be a pretty quiet deadline for the most part. So it stinks as a content creator, for sure. Like yesterday, obviously on our show we had a room full of guests, so that kind of kept the show going. But I was super concerned doing the show yesterday that we just weren't going to have enough content and enough to talk about because it was a little bit disappointing. But
it was entertaining, I promise. And you had
yeah,
some people in the comments that helped. So
yeah, but was it? I guess you have to say it was a flop, just because it just wasn't that exciting. There wasn't really. Last year we saw KD get traded, and it put
and
the
Kyrie
Suns
a week before that,
right. It put these teams in different conversations. It made us have different conversations about these teams. Obviously, the Mavs and Knicks, they get better, but we're not looking at the Mavs and Knicks in a different tier really than we were before.
Yeah,
like no team really moved the needle that much.
I think it depends on who you ask. I really do, right? You ask a Mavs fan, like you just said, like you ask certain teams, like, yeah, I think it was good. But then you ask 80% of the league, it's probably a flop. So I would have to lean with the statistic on that one.
Yeah.
All right. A couple of things before we get out of here. I'm going to put you on the spot because the NBA draft question the other day, I didn't know what you were going to ask me, to be fair. So I'm doing the same back to you. So the Bulls are currently projected to finish 11th. Obviously, I think because of that, there may be a pick convey or whatever, right? If you sim the lottery once, I'm just doing it on Take-a-thon, to get 11th again. So this is perfect. So is there a guy right now that you are just, that would be the perfect pick for the Bulls, regardless of the not making deals or whatever, just a guy that you want on your team when the draft rolls around if they're picking 11th?
I'm starting to really fall in love with Stephon Castle. I think he provides a lot, and especially if Caruso is going to be on the way out at some point, he's a guy who could come in and kind of fill that role to some regard. He's going to come in and be a really good defender.
I see a lot of Kobe White in him, by the way, so I love that.
Yeah. I think he has a little bit of Kobe White in terms of his offensive game, but I think he has a lot more juice defensively than Kobe White. Yeah. I think he could come in and really be like a really one of those guys defensively. Other than that, I'd love Reed Shepherd. I think every NBA team would love Reed Shepherd, honestly. 100%. Trey Alexander's a guy. I'd love us to get one of these guys that isn't as much of a project. I know,
but those all are guards. So is that still something you're sticking with?
I wouldn't mind going for a big man. I just let me see who's really out there. Still want to make sure I don't miss anyone.
That's how I felt. That's why I was like, there's so many college guys for the answer. And I was like, I don't want to leave anybody out.
If we could somehow look into getting Sarr, I'm over the moon. I'm ecstatic. But other than that, really, I think this is a kind of guard-heavy class and just in general. So yeah. I know we're going to go into a full rebuild at some point. So we should kind of draft for potential and project guys, I guess. But I want to see guys who could actually come in and play. So like a Reed Shepherd, who I know is going to come in and contribute to obviously we might not be a good team, so it might not be winning basketball, but make contributions that you want to see out of a winning player. Same thing with Mr. Castle. Like, I just want to see. I don't want to see guys who we have to wait 5 years for them to develop. We see it with Patrick. I'm still waiting for Patrick Williams to develop. Like, it hasn't been. I love Patrick Williams. I really do, and I still think the potential is there, but it hasn't been fun. It hasn't been fun. So just get guys who could play. Honestly, that's what I would say.
To that point, I mean, that's what happened with Kobe White. It took 4 years. So, I thought you were going to say something there.
No,
I mean, it did.
I'm thinking of the words. Kobe White, I think, is different than Patrick Williams. So, because Kobe White developing, I think, was like developing slowly was a product of the opportunity he was given.
100%.
Patrick Williams been given the opportunity since he walked in the door. So it's kind of different scenarios. Like Kobe White, it was always there for me. Like, I always saw it. Obviously, I don't know if I saw it at this level, but as a North Carolina fan who watched him for 30 games on my team, like, I always saw Kobe White being a good NBA player. So kind of different scenarios.
I mean, look, he was 5th in Rookie of the Year voting his rookie year, which is just a thing to think about in and of itself. And then games started in order from year 1 to year 5. 1, 54, 17, 2, 52. So they tried it out in sophomore year, right? There was enough potential there. It was clearly something that they tried. All right. I ask every guest this just because I think it's fun and just a nice way to kind of put a bow on things. Who comes out of the East, who comes out of the West, and who wins the finals? We're 1 day removed from the deadline.
All right. So my preseason picks were the Bucks and the Suns, and I had the Suns winning it all.
Which is still in the realm of possibility.
Definitely it's still in the realm of possibilities, but I don't feel too good about it. Like, I could really just answer this and be mainstream and just say Celtics Nuggets, but I don't know if I want to be mainstream.
What do you believe? What do you believe the day after the trade deadline? That's the way I like to ask this question, because it's not just as simple as make your prediction. I always clarify to every person I ask. I say, at the time that you're on the show, because I could have you back in April and the answer's completely okay to be different.
I'm gonna stick with the Suns out west. I think the Suns they're getting going now. The guys are healthy. They've been pretty good since Beal, Book, and KD have all been in the lineup. So I'm gonna stick with the Suns out west. The East is tough because I do believe in the Bucks. I believe in Giannis. I believe in Dame. I don't believe in that head coach they have there. I really don't. So it's like, why? I'm gonna go with the Celtics, man. I just don't feel comfortable picking the Bucks right now.
That's a head coach that, I mean, look, it's head coach malpractice between those two in the Eastern Conference Finals. That would be,
Yeah, just because of that, because both coaches I don't really believe in. I'm going to take the more talented roster. I'm going to go with the Celtics, but give me the Suns winning it over the Celtics, and I'll say in 6 games.
Doc has the head coaching advantage in that matchup quickly, but, I mean, Charles Lee and I forgot the other guy's name that they got in the offseason that made such a big acquisition. Oh, it's killing me. Now I can't think of his name. Charles Lee and the other assistant. People would think you could remember Charles Lee easier, but while I'm pulling it up, I have Celtics Nuggets, and I tell you that because that was my preseason prediction, and I still think that's possible, and I still believe that. So, coaching staff: Joe Mazzulla, Charles Lee, Sam Cassell. Oh, yeah. How do I forget Sam Cassell? Right. By the way, shout out to Emil Jefferson, by the way, from Duke, who carved out a solid.
He's with the Celtics too now.
He's the Celtics. Yeah, he's one of their coaches.
I know he was with Duke for a while, like as a coach,
where he got the opportunity, and he's listed as a full titled assistant coach. So,
that's cool, man. Emil Jefferson's one of the Duke guys that I rooted for.
He was hard to hate. It's a good point.
Yeah, I liked Emil Jefferson.
If it's not North Carolina, who wins the national championship?
UConn runs it back. They're loaded.
That's where we're headed. I really think that's where we're headed.
They're loaded, bro. Not Purdue. I'll tell you that much. Anyone but Purdue. Don't see it with them.
That you just don't see. Okay, I was gonna say that was my follow-up question. Is that the case? All right. I think that was good. Obviously, I think we could have gone more in depth on the predictions, but it's supposed to be something that just you watch the game every night. What do you believe in? Here it is. So Celtics. I have Celtics Nuggets to be clear. I didn't finish the statement. Celtics Nuggets, and I have the Celtics in 7. That was kind of like 6 or 7 because I think they finally get over the hump. Even though I think defensively they're going to have to add. Maybe it's Tillman. Maybe Tillman was the guy, right? You have to have enough bodies to throw it. Jokic or I think they're defensively strong enough to stop the Nuggets entirely and just let Jokic do whatever he's going to do. The problem is stopping the passing and the playmaking. That's just going to be like putting bigs on him. That's why Minnesota is like has a better chance to beat the Nuggets than the Celtics do. But I think they've learned enough from their mistakes if they can game plan. Again, big if. But if they can game plan a stop for Jokic or just something to neutralize the Nuggets offense, I think the Celtics have the talent to win the finals.
Yeah, for sure.
And then make sure I heard yours right. Suns and
Celtics,
and then
Suns in 6. Yeah.
Yep. All right. You didn't give yourself enough credit, so I'll say it at the top. You completely brushed over the fact you guys just hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So first of all, congratulations. That's a huge achievement. I've been doing this for 3 years, and I'm 90% away from that. So it's an incredible achievement. Y'all should be really proud of. I'll leave the link for the hoodies in the description below. I don't have it ready for on the ticker, but people can click the description. They can't click the thing on the screen. On the way out, plug anything, talk about anything you guys are working on coming up. Obviously, the Super Bowl. Quickly, what's the Super Bowl pick? I should have probably done that too.
Not betting against number 15. It's that simple.
You saw my comment, right?
Yeah, what is he? 10-1-1 against the spread as an underdog?
1-1 against the spread as an underdog.
Give me that guy. It's funny because we did our whole Super Bowl preview. I think it was a 2-hour podcast. The three of us, our analysis of the game was, I'm not betting against Mahomes. I'm taking the Chiefs. We spent, I think, 3 minutes total, like actually giving our game picks.
It's that simple, man. Free money with Mahomes, and then everything else is just stuff you got to work on with props and whatnot. I'm leaning towards yellow Gatorade. Hadn't happened since the Eagles Super Bowl.
You know what I'm rocking with, man? I'm not, I'm not one of these betting experts, but my heart is telling me that we're gonna get a Marquez Valdez-Scantling anytime touchdown. My heart's been.
There's probably good value there too. Honestly.
Definitely good value.
If your name's not Travis Kelce or any of the offensive players for the Niners, it's probably good value.
I think real quick before we end, just my reasoning for that. The Niners are going to be so focused in taking away the underneath stuff with Travis Kelce and all that they're just going to mess up one play and let MVS get behind them.
I think one play for him. I think another good value I heard on, I believe, one of the Ringer podcasts was him. He has really good odds for the longest play.
Yeah.
So not a longest touchdown, but just something happens, right? McCaffrey's another good one for that too because he gets like an 80-yard wheel but he doesn't score. It doesn't really matter. It just has to be the longest play from scrimmage. I think those are really good values as well. I think that's a really cool segue. Before you plug, Sign Up Expert is something that we are also part of here at the 2 Pointers Podcast. If you're trying to get into sports betting, daily fantasy, I have a promotion coming up with this specifically for North Carolina. We are going to have legalized sports gambling. I know you guys are fortunate up there and have it now, but we get it on March 13th, I believe, if that's correct. Signupexpert.com/TPP. No matter what state you're in, obviously North Carolina specifically, we won't be able to have it for the Super Bowl. We'll have it for the ACC tournament, which will be really cool. But I have access to any promotion through Sign Up Expert that you can get on a national level. Help support the show. Signupexpert.com/TPP. Hadn't brought them up in a while because I haven't done a best bets in a while. So, all right, plug away. I shouldn't have probably done an ad read right in front of you, but we're at the 59-minute mark, so it's perfect. On the way out of here, plug away, talk about what you guys are working on, where people can find y'all, etc.
Yeah, man, I'm Chris. Like I said in the beginning, I have my own podcast, Obi's Office. I'm welcome to have anyone on as a guest on that podcast. So if anyone seeing this wants to, talk some ball, hit me up, man. But also co-host of the Ball Game podcast. Like Trev said, we just hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. Super big milestone, but we have some big things coming. We're working on expanding and being more than just a podcast. We're figuring it out, getting out some IRL content, whether it's, real basketball, some runs at the park and stuff like that, or just some vlog style content. But yeah, man, go check us out. If you like what you see, give us a sub, man.
That's Chris O'Brien, OB's Office, Ball Game Podcast. Thanks again, my friend.
Thank you, man. It's always a pleasure talking with you.